Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Double Down with Breslo, where we cover the business of sports betting. Today, we have a gentleman who recently came to America from across the pond. We welcome him to New York. I'm anxious to hear his review of New York so far. It's Callum Broxton, and he is head of U.S. operations for Checked Media. I got that right? Checked Media?
That's the one.
Yeah, Checked Media, and they provide all kinds of services to sports bettors, including having a couple great apps and websites now for U.S. players. So we welcome Checked Media and Callum Broxton to the States.
Thank you very much, James. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. New York review. It has its moments.
Where are you living?
So we're just above the East Village. We're on 20th Street.
Okay.
On the east side. So we've got the river next to us. It's nice and quiet in relative terms for New York. So overall, it's been a good move.
So are there company offices now in New York?
We're all remote in the US. So we've got a few full-time staff that are sort of dotted around the country. So I'm in New York. We've got a guy in Philly and one in Nashville. And we've got quite a few freelancers sort of dotted around, mainly in New Jersey. I found that to be sort of the center of the gambling world in terms of employment and people who are looking for work in the industry. There's a lot of people over there across the Hudson.
Right. And I'm looking in your apartment. It doesn't look like you're housing any migrants yet.
No, not seeing any of those, to be honest. I think that might be one of those tabloid things that gets blown up out of proportion potentially. But no, we're all good. It's like I say, it's been a lot of fun since we moved here. I moved over with my girlfriend, so we've been through it together. She moved over from the UK as well to study, so it was a good timing basically between me moving for work, she moved for study, so it all works out very well.
Great. Well, welcome. So tell us about Checked Media, because I know you've been there a while, and the company is from the UK and been around for quite some time, but is relatively new in the US.
Yeah, absolutely. So Checked as a entity has been around for 12 years now. It started off very humble beginnings as a Facebook page in a university bedroom by the two guys that founded the company. So it's been around since then, and since its inception as a Facebook page, it grew and went from strength to strength. It sort of grew an audience on that page.
So when it was just a Facebook page, what was it?
It was purely a community for people to share their bets. So people were sending their soccer parlays for the Saturday games, and it'd just be a community, almost like a forum where people would share bets, share picks, and then people would get sort of famous within that if they won a few, and then people's reputations would build. And from it, they started to build an affiliate business from that Facebook page, and then expanded out from there.
Great. So, yeah, I mean, the whole affiliate business is relatively new in the US, but I guess it's been around for a long time in the UK.
Forever, yeah, since the internet and social media, because obviously in the UK we've always had gambling legalized. Like, it wasn't over here where it took a while for it all to come online and get regulated. We've always had it. So growing up, even as a kid, it was like the Grand National, for example. That's a big horse race that happens every April. It's sort of like a cultural ritual to go and stand outside the bookies on the high street where your parents go in and put £1 on the horse you picked in the morning. So it's sort of ingrained in UK culture, gambling. It's always been there. So yeah, we've always had affiliate marketing since the online boom happened, and then obviously social media followed that up a few years later.
And what's the model there? Do you have to be licensed to be an affiliate?
Yeah, you have to have a license with the Gambling Commission. Again, much easier because you only have to deal with one legal entity. There are the different states and rev share, CPA licenses, and everything else that goes with it over here. Over there, you go to the Gambling Commission, show them that you're all above board and you're good to go.
And were you guys always just focused in the UK or all of Europe?
No, so we've only ever been UK up until about 3 years ago. We had some decent traffic from South America and Africa on our UK websites because they've got huge interest in English soccer, which is what we specialize in over there. So we got some decent traffic from there, but we've never really touched it and took it seriously, I guess, until, like I say, 3 years ago when we really started to build out the US business plan. And then alongside that, we sort of said, well, while we're doing this, let's also sort of bring LATAM and Africa along with it.
What has the explosion in the US done for UK gambling? Has there been anything that's crossed over that's changed about what's going on in the UK in light of the US?
Weirdly, no. There's not been too much influence going the other way. I think it will change. I think personally, things like DFS, underdog, price picks, that sort of product, nothing like that exists in the UK. And I think there's a massive opportunity there to build a product for the next, it sounds a bit cliche, but the next generation of sports bettors, because it clearly works. It's clearly an engaging product and offering. And I think that at some point soon, there'll be something like that built in the UK, which will have come from what people have learned from the US market. But no, in terms of the actual products and what is available to customers, there's not been too much crossover, which again is strange because, I mean, obviously Flutter Group own FanDuel, and they also own three of the largest sports books in the UK in Betfair, Paddy Power, and Sky Bet. And there's not been too much, again, from FanDuel that sort of dripped into those. Apart from, I guess, if you're a big NBA and NFL fan, they have done a little bit in terms of increasing the available markets on those sports because they have them over here. So it's very easy for them just to add them into their UK products. But the uptake on those isn't too big. NBA and NFL, they're growing, but they aren't particularly big for handle and for market share over in the UK.
What would be the biggest? Is NFL the biggest US sport in the UK?
Yeah, definitely. And the London Games have helped that. It's the sport with the most. If you were to ask like a random person on a British high street if they do any American athletes, 9 out of 10 it would be an American footballer. It'd be Tom Brady or someone like that. They're the ones that have managed to cross over a little bit into pop culture.
But we're still just talking about, when you're talking about total bet handle on sports, NFL would be down at like 10% at best.
Lower than that, I think, way lower. The Super Bowl on that specific day, it probably takes closer to 10%, but in the regular season, there's just not enough fans at the minute. It's obviously grown. Like I said, the London Games have been massive. They're now way more regular, and everyone, they sell out in seconds. You have to be on the pre-sale to manage to get tickets at a reasonable price for those games. So it's definitely getting more popular. It's a lot more televised now. Sky Sports, who are the main broadcaster, they have pretty much every game. They have Red Zone, which is sort of, again, that's growing in popularity. People are enjoying that format of TV because Red Zone is so unique. We don't really have anything like that in the UK for soccer. So it's definitely picking up.
Mm-hmm. How are the UK sports ranked? Obviously soccer number one, but give us the rankings down from there and then until we eventually hit NFL.
Well, it's pretty much soccer, which is a huge chunk, like way over half, way over the majority of the handle. And then horse racing is number 2 by a clear margin. Like I said before, horse racing is probably the thing you grow up being proud of in the UK, weirdly, is from a sports point of view, because it's very unique. We have jumps racing where the horses jump over hurdles and fences, which isn't really common. But obviously, the American tracks and the Australian tracks where horse racing is also popular in those countries, they're pretty much just flat tracks and ovals. So it's very distinctive in the UK from that point of view. So horse racing is massive. And there's a week in the year called Cheltenham Week, which is a festival in Cheltenham, a little town in England, which has been going on for, I think, well over 100 years. And in that 1 week, the handle, I mean, the revenue that everyone makes in the industry is the equivalent of like the previous 2 months combined in that 1 week period, because everyone goes crazy. It's a little bit like March Madness from that sense, where everyone gets involved. Everyone has picks for Cheltenham, like you'd have a bracket for March Madness. So yeah, horse racing is a clear number 2. And then after that, it pretty much depends on the calendar. If there's a big boxing fight, that'll be the 3rd. If there's a big UFC fight, if there's a big golf tournament, the rest of them are relatively interchangeable. And then NFL sits probably below boxing, golf, and maybe tennis as well. Throw that one in there.
So interesting how much soccer dominates there, because when you think about the US, we've got everybody considers 4 major sports, football, baseball, basketball, hockey. And then now soccer's kind of coming up there as a strong 5th right now. But, that's 5 solid sports that people are betting on. And you guys are basically betting on 1.
Yeah, well, I think soccer in a way in England, and in Europe, that is multiple major sports in one, in a weird way, because you've got, in England, there's 92 professional football clubs, and they play throughout the pyramid. So you've got the Premier League, Championship, League One, League Two, and they all have huge fan bases. They sell out 10, 12, 15,000 seat stadiums, even lower down the leagues. And then you've got the non-league, which is not professional, but still you can bet on it. And you can go and watch it, and it's a decent level. And then you've got the European competition. So you've got La Liga in Spain, Bundesliga in Germany, Liga 1 in France, the Scottish Premier League, the Portuguese Premier League. You've got all these different leagues that are professional, and they pretty much, if you look at the games and on a calendar, there's multiple games every single day across all of those different leagues and countries. So we
365 days a year.
Pretty much. I think the only day is Christmas Day. Yeah.
And if you're a footballer, are they playing year round or not really?
Well, that's been the controversy recently, because there's been a lot of pressure to introduce sort of bigger breaks, because the seasons have been getting longer and longer, because the Premier League season goes from August until May. So June and July are really the only off months, but pre-season starts in sort of mid-July. So the players are coming back mid-July and going until the end of May. And then if you've got an international tournament like the World Cup or the European Championships or African Cup of Nations, which is starting in a few days, then they don't really get more than 2 to 3 weeks between end of the season and then starting to get ready for the next one.
Yeah, whereas MLS in the US, I imagine, is way shorter than that.
Yeah, it's a really short window for the MLS in comparison.
Yeah, which gives a guy like, I mean, Messi, is Messi, I don't even know, is he going to be playing anywhere else besides the US?
Well, there's the Copa America, which is happening this summer, which is the international tournament for the American continent. So I think he'll be playing in that for Argentina, but he won't be playing club football for anyone else other than Inter Miami. But that's why players go to retire in the MLS, because they get a nice off season, much better lifestyle. They can relax, and the load on the body is just a lot less than it would be in Europe.
And what's he making on his U.S. deal with Miami compared to what he would have made if he had stayed?
Oh, he's making a lot more. And then I think he's also tied into things like the Apple TV subscriptions for the league. Like, he has a lot of wider things outside of just his regular salary, and obviously his Adidas endorsement, that he's now he's their number one across the globe, and the US being a huge market.
Wow. So despite soccer being essentially the number 5 sport in the US, he will make more money as part of this deal than if he had stayed in Europe.
Way more, yeah. And it's the same to be said for all of the. So every club has a number of designated players where they can offer outside the salary cap in the MLS, don't they? So if you're one of those players, the likelihood is you'll be making more in America than you would if you stayed in Europe.
Interesting. All right, well, let's take our break, and then let's talk about what you guys got going now in the U.S. We'll be back right after this with Callum Broxton of Check Media.
Girl, you know it's been way too long. I got to get back in my zone. Hey. 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 All right. Come on. 3, 2, 1. You know I'm feeling too good to be cooped up. Hey ladies, don't we look good? We came to have a good time. I said I'm feeling too good to be cooped up. Me and all of my girls, we gon' tear it up.
Like the Kentucky Derby, Woodford Reserve Bourbon is a spectacle for the senses.
Welcome back, everybody. We're talking with Callum Broxton of Check Media, head of U.S. operations, recently moved here to help their expansion into the U.S. So what's your guys' biggest product that you got going in the U.S. right now?
So the big asset we've got in the US is the Flashpicks brand. So that sits across social, website, and app. So we recently just in May of this year launched the Flashpicks app, which is basically built as the ultimate wagering companion for sports bettors. It's aimed at essentially making it as easy as possible to build your bets. So we basically build products from experience ourselves. So we know how long it takes if you want to pick a bet for a wildcard weekend, for example, coming up, all the different websites you'd have to use to try and drill down into each stat for each player. And you'd have to use a lot of different resources to come to one conclusion. And we basically built a product that funnels all of that into one easy to use interface where you can pick your bets and do all the research all in one place.
And so it's called Flashpicks.
Yeah.
Right. So you can download it on your phone. You can also go to the website.
Yeah, that is on Apple and Android, so it's available on both, and it's also sits on the website as well. Yeah.
So will that also tell me what all the different sports books have the line set at?
Yeah, so it'll tell you which books have the best lines and the best odds. Obviously, some books might have 27.5 for LeBron points, and another might have 26.5, and you've got that ability within the app to choose if you want to go more punchy on the odds and take the higher line, or play it a bit more safe.
And will it allow, will it directly link to the betting site? So if I click on LeBron over 27.5 points, does it actually take me to the betting site?
It does for a handful of operators who have the ability through the API feeds. But to be fair, that's one of the big things we learned coming into the US market is the difficulty in getting access to those sorts of things, and the functionality. It's not just a case of not getting access; it doesn't exist at a lot of operators, as in being able to do the one-click bet slip, click out, and it deep links into opening up. You click on us from our site, you go to BetMGM, and it's there on your phone in your app. BetMGM are one of the ones we do have it with, and that obviously is much better for the user journey. You don't have to then go and try and find your bet again on the operator platform. It's all done in one click, and it takes a lot less time.
Uh-huh. So are you saying in the UK, you guys have been able to do it a lot more fluidly and there it works?
Yeah, in the UK, it's even slicker than that. So there's API wallet integration in the UK, where if you have a good enough relationship with an operator and you've got a decent enough audience, then you're able to integrate a single sign-on into your product itself. So, for example, in the UK in our app, you can sign into your Bet365 account within our app, and you never have to leave it to place a bet. It's all done through API, so you don't have to open Bet365. It's all logged in, centralized through our products, and that's the same for other websites like OddsChecker in the UK. They've got similar abilities. So, hopefully, it gets to that point in the US. I know it's going to be a lot trickier in terms of the legislation and the laws in all the different states. I think that it might be a bit of a pipe dream, but definitely having the instant bet slip click out feature, I think that's an absolute necessity. And I think that'll be a big push over the next year for the operators to get fixed.
So how many operators are you guys connected with in UK?
So we've got that level of integration with 5 different operators in the UK.
Uh-huh. And US, if I'm on Flashpicks and looking at the different odds, are you showing me all the available companies or only the ones you guys have a relationship with?
It'll be all the available ones that are in your state. So if you're in New Jersey, you won't see anything that aren't any operators that aren't legal there. So it makes sure it's nice and localized for your experience. So again, you're not going to click on something that you actually can't get access to.
And how are you guys able to provide that information in real time? Is it because you've got a relationship with the operator? Because otherwise, if they change the line, how do you guys necessarily know that?
Yeah, it's all automated through the API feeds. So we have access to their odds feeds through our development company, Check Dev, who build all of our products in-house. They onboard and ingest all of the APIs from all the operators, do a load of complicated stuff behind closed doors, and then for me and the user, it looks super easy and everything's just there in a nice, presentable way.
What about providing alerts? I could imagine, especially like this weekend, there's 6 big football games in the US, and you're tracking it through the week, and the line is -3.5, and the line just moved to -4. Is there a way you could kind of notify your followers that there's been a line change?
Yeah, so we predominantly use social media for that. So we build our brands on multiple platforms, so we have a bit of diversification away from being over reliant on one. And social is what we use for things like that. So we'll put out blasts and alerts, like you mentioned, about any major line movements. If a player gets ruled out, and another player tends to do a lot better when that other players are playing, especially for the NBA with the last minute withdrawals and benchings. That's something that we really try and push through social.
What is your guess right now on how much wagering's happening on the game as opposed to the player results? Do you have any feel as to percentages on that?
Well, I'm massively biased because of what I see and what world I'm in that we're in a recreational bettors world, which is player prop crazy. Like that's all anyone talks about. It's all you ever see on Twitter. If you scroll through gambling Twitter, you will never really see any game props. You might see like a laundry list shopping list ticket with 20 teams on to cover or to win the money line. But no, I'm all in on player props, and that's all I see. So I'm definitely not the best person to ask for an objective opinion on that.
Uh-huh. That is interesting, though. I mean, that is a big change, in the US. It's gone from, I mean, first of all, the only place you could place a sports bet for the most part was Vegas. And everything would be up on the board, and it was all just the games. They didn't have the players at all. Then you have fantasy come in and pretty much blow open the doors on sports betting in the US. I think, the expansion of fantasy is kind of what helped all of that, which obviously is player based. And now you have the move into people betting on players even when it's not fantasy, right? So I don't know, maybe comparing UK, what would you say it is in the UK? Has it been player based betting for a long time there?
No, it's actually the opposite. So it's starting to grow, but if you were to do the sort of mirror image in terms of what we see on social in the UK, it's still mainly team based. I think it's probably because there's more, like I said, there's way more teams, so there's way more variety and difference you can put into it. Whereas the NFL is so fixed, and NBA as well. It's very few teams. They play, obviously, the NBA play a lot of back-to-back games, so betting on the team can be difficult because there's blowout risks, and especially the last couple of seasons, you don't know what players are going to get rested or are going to want to not play for a game, so that obviously massively affects any game lines you take. But yeah, in the UK, it's the player props are growing, but there's way less availability of markets by the nature of the sport. So for soccer, there's only so many stat lines you can really ever want to bet on. Like there's shots, there's fouls, and there's players to get a yellow card. But aside from that, it's kind of not too much else that's player based that you could do. They've tried with things like passes and things, but the numbers on that, it's like over 355 passes in a game, and no one really knows what a normal amount would be. So you don't know if you're getting a raw deal or not from the book.
Is there much fantasy to speak of when it comes to soccer in UK?
So Fantasy Premier League, the FPL, the official one that is run by the Premier League itself, is huge. That is globally massive. It has millions and millions of players, but it's free to play. There's no even in-app purchases. It's all free, and that's huge in terms of, I don't know, if you've got like text change with your friends, you'd all have a fantasy league. If you play it in a recreational soccer team, you'd all have a fantasy Premier League league. But in terms of paid fantasy, no. A few people have tried to enter the market, obviously taking experience from the US side of things and seeing if it would translate. But I think because that game has been there, I mean, that game's been there since you had to use to write in. I was speaking to my girlfriend's dad over Christmas, and he was talking to me about how he used to play the same game when he was like 15, 20 years younger. You'd have to sort of write a letter in or email in the early days of dial-up internet to do your transfers and make your team. So that game has such a head start and has such a grasp on the audience that I don't think it's going to be possible for a paid fantasy operator to really break into the market there.
Well, and also you kind of mentioned this before in soccer, what would be the measurements for the fantasy player? I mean, I guess they already have it, but aren't the measurements kind of not quite as interesting as they would be in football, for instance?
Exactly. It's goals. If you concede a goal, if you get a yellow card, if you get an assist, that's kind of it. There's not too much else that you can really work into it. And obviously the NFL, it's pretty much endless in terms of the fantasy opportunities and what you can really work into the stats.
Yeah. So tell us how the affiliate deals are typically working. I mean, how many companies you guys working with, and what does that look like?
So the numbers dwindled over the past couple of months. Obviously, Unibet and Kindred pulled out the North American market. WinBet did similar. So the number of operators is getting a little bit more concentrated, which weirdly I prefer, because it means that the market actually becomes a little bit more competitive, in my opinion, because the operators know who they're up against, and it's very easy for them to sort of introduce new promos for new users. It helps existing user promotions as well, because the battle for share of wallet becomes so much more intense. So we're working with all the major operators, and we've got a couple more hopefully coming in the next couple of months. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because the last year there was so much consolidation. There was, like I mentioned before, the two pretty major operators that withdrew, and it's left basically the people that have the budget size to cope with competing in the US market. I think it caught a lot of operators out, to be honest, just how much it would take.
So WinBet, you're saying, is out?
Yeah,
And what was the other one?
Unibet and Kindred.
Gotcha. And what about Hard Rock in Florida, which is where I happen to be right now? Have you built a relationship with them yet?
We haven't yet. We haven't got any we haven't got any relationships with the one state operators. I think that their affiliate, from an affiliate point of view, they're less reliant on it because they have the monopoly and they don't necessarily need affiliate relationships of widespread right now. Similar with ESPN Bet, when they launched, it didn't really need affiliate because why would they spend a fortune on acquisition costs through third parties when they had so many levers they could pull themselves?
Right. So so Hard Rock just started taking bets, I think, in December. And I guess has a monopoly essentially on sports betting in Florida. Are you saying there's another state that has a similar model where there's a single operator?
Yeah, I think Oregon is DraftKings, and I think Delaware is DraftKings as well. I might be wrong on that one, but I know Oregon is definitely just DraftKings.
Gotcha. Maybe those deals are through the state lottery or something?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Interesting. So yeah, if you got a monopoly, don't really need to compete, don't need to worry about it. It's going to be interesting. But yeah, I was kind of surprised. I mean, Florida obviously is a humongous state to have a monopoly in.
It is. And I mean, it's a monopoly up to a point because the DFS brands are down there. So PrizePicks and Underdog and the others have been there for a little while. So it will be interesting to see if Hard Rock going live eats into their market share at all or their handle. And seeing what the crossover is from DFS into traditional sportsbook, because we haven't really seen a proper case of that before, because the other big states with DFS are California and Texas, and they're both years away from really having a serious push at legalizing sports betting. So I'm interested to see how the DFS operators are affected by Hard Rock going live and legal.
Is Hard Rock in any other state?
I don't believe so. I think they've got a social casino which is live in a few more states, but in terms of the sports betting side, I think they're just Florida.
So that's something I got to assume is coming. And, once they get their legs under them and are doing extremely well in Florida, which you got to assume they will, that then they could become a pretty big player heading into other states.
You'd think so. They've got the brand name is incredibly strong. It all comes down to budget and whether they have enough to compete with the heavyweights that are in there now, because obviously FanDuel and DraftKings, everyone knows about them. But then you've got Bet365, who are sort of the dark horse in the market, in that they aren't massively well known in the US, but their tagline is the world's most popular sports book because they're used by the most users globally. Like they have presence in every single continent, and they also uniquely are privately owned. They have one owner, Denise Coates, who has run the business since she took it online. It's actually an interesting story because her dad used to run it as a high street operator, a high street betting shop, and she took it all online and turned it into what it is now, which is it's a pretty amazing story. And she's actually, a news story was out the other day, she's the highest paid woman in Britain. So she's done amazingly well with that. Like I say, it's a really interesting story how it all came from humble beginnings again to what it is now. But I think they'll be the one that can really challenge and looks to upset the big boys, basically, where they've got unlimited budget, so much cash in the bank, and they have no one to answer to. There's no shareholders, there's no pressure to launch in states, and they don't really want to, and they want to be very measured. So I think that they'll be the one that could sneak up on a few people and take up quite a big chunk of market share.
Are they number one in UK?
Yes, definitely number one or two. Them and Sky Bet, they're the two that dominate over there.
Uh-huh. And how many states is Bet365 in the US?
Currently 7. So they're only in, and a few of them are small, like they're in Iowa, which is obviously a very small state. They recently went live in Louisiana. That was in November. And I think that their plan is just going to be one by one. We'll just, every few months, we'll add a new state. And then in 3 years, we'll be in them all and have built up to such a point where there's a groundswell of reaction to them and people start to become a bit more familiar with the brand and the products. Because in my opinion, the products that Bet365 has is the best alongside FanDuel. So I think that's what they're betting on. They're betting on having a market leading products, and they're just going to, like I say, take it state by state, market by market, and start to really build an audience from that.
So when you talk about who you think has the best product when it comes to an online sports book, I mean, what is it that makes one guy having a better product than another?
I think the big thing for me is having something bespoke. So a lot of people, the smaller operators that have now, well, funnily enough, now pulled out the market, like Kindred and Unibet and WinBet, they tend to use off-the-shelf sports books, which are so limited in terms of what you can actually offer customers aside from everything that anyone else does. And for me, the big thing that sets you apart as a product is unique markets or propositions for users to get stuck into. And if you're using an off-the-shelf product, you just can't introduce those. So that's why FanDuel, DraftKings, Bet365, with their in-house products, they can be so flexible and reactive to any news that breaks. They can introduce new things instantaneously. They can jump on trends a lot quicker than other operators can. So I think for me, the big thing is having something that you build yourself. Obviously, you need to have good people in charge of building it and make sure that it looks good for the customer, but it needs to be something that you've got full control over.
Mm-hmm. Last question. What do you see wagering on anything besides sports becoming a thing? In the US, I'm not even sure it's permitted. Maybe there's a handful of states that would allow, on a presidential election or that kind of thing. But I mean, in the UK, are you seeing anything breaking out in that regard?
Yeah, it tends to be a bit novelty. Like there's one every year, which airport will have snow on Christmas Day. That's always one that gets a lot of conversation around it. And elections are huge. I mean, in the UK, again, we have something a little bit different where we've got the betting exchange, it's called the Betfair Exchange, where you can lay and hedge bets on there, and it's peer to peer. So there's no vig. It's all done on commission basis for the operator, and a lot of money gets put through elections from that. A ton of money from different people that they're not your normal gamblers, but they have a lot of money that like to get involved in those sorts of things. So I don't know, without having that sort of product, like a peer-to-peer exchange, whether that would be possible to do in the US. And like you said, I mean, some states you can't even bet on your own college team to that's all full stop. So I don't know. It'd be great if it was, because that'd be a lot of fun.
So what's the betting line right now in the UK on US president's election? Do you know what it is?
That's a very good question. I can find out in about 2 seconds, but I got me telling it up. But my guess is it's probably an absolute coin flip. I think the news that we get in the UK from the US is it's a bit chaotic at the minute. That's basically the consensus.
Yeah. No, it would be a fun thing to track for sure, because that line's going to be moving quite a bit between now and November. Okay, what would you like to point out? Where would you like people to find you?
I mean, LinkedIn on Callum Broxton, and the company obviously checks as well. Give us a search on there, and then if you want to download the Flashpicks app, you just search Flashpicks in the App Store and the Google Play Store. And if you're on Twitter, then give Flashpicks a follow as well.
Cool. Callum, thanks so much for joining. Callum Broxton, everyone, from Check Media. Thanks for joining Double Down, and thank you all for watching and listening. We'll be back soon with another episode. Take care, everyone.
I want you to smash that like button.